In this video clip, Trinity is standing outside and I'm pretending like I'm interviewing her for maybe a miniature documentary or something like that. While I like the green and the good saturation in the color, I don't like the overall image, and most of it has to do with the lighting. So the question is, what can we do to improve this? While it's my opinion that Trinity is cute no matter what kind of lighting she's standing in, this lighting is not exactly the most flattering because it's a real hard light coming from the sun, and you can tell it's hard because of these shadows and the very sharp edges between the shadows and the light area on her face. If you're somebody that's watched a lot of Izzy video episodes up to this point, you probably know exactly what to do with this harsh sunlight. Before I get into the solution, I want to show you the setup so you can see I have nothing there except for the microphone, and that's why there's that harsh sunlight on Trinity. The first thing I'm going to do to soften the sunlight is use a scrim. Now, because I'm shooting entirely on my own, I'm using a light stand and just attaching this white reflector. Really, it's not even supposed to be used as a scrim, but that's all I have with me at the time. And so I'm going to use it, let the sunlight pass through the reflector and onto Trinity, and that creates a larger light source, which is softer. So this is Trinity under the harsh light of the sun. Watch what happens as I show you the effect of using the scrim and sort of the dramatic overall effect that has on the image. Isn't that much better?
And I glued some of these stripe things, and somebody was punching staples on there, and I start shaking them.
Again, this is what the setup looks like at this point. All I'm using is a scrim attached to a light stand and a microphone suspended above Trinity's head and attached to a C-stand. One more thing I want to point out real quick before I move on to the next section is that in the before picture, the background here is much darker than it is in the after picture. The reason why is because once I put the scrim to block the sunlight, it creates sort of a shadow, and I have to open up the aperture in the camera, which lets more light in, so the background actually becomes brighter to my image. So we'll say the rule of thumb is to put your subject in front of a darker background. Don't put them in front of a bright background, because when you have to brighten it up even more, it's going to really blow out the highlights. Now, because I want to add a little more dimension to her face, I've decided I'm going to go ahead and use a white bounce board to fill in the shadow side of her face a little bit. This is before I add the fill board, and now as I move it closer to her, you can see how it brightens her up and adds a little bit more dimension. I really like to use a fill board in combination with the scrim when shooting outside because it really does make the subject look at their very best. Just as a quick review, this is Trinity with just the regular old sunlight on her, very harsh. Now I've added the scrim so it softens up the light. And now I've added the fill board, which makes it so she has a little bit more dimension in her face. And I say fill board, but I accidentally used it as a new key light, and the reason why is because I was using direct sunlight to reflect up onto her face. And the diffuse light coming from the scrim is actually not as powerful as the bounce light from the whiteboard coming directly from the sun. So that's what makes it so that that side of her face is actually brighter. It's the wrong side of her face, but it still looks good, so I'm going to keep it. So this is the final setup. I have a shotgun microphone attached to a C-stand above Trinity's head. I also have a white reflector panel, which I'm using as a scrim attached to a light stand. And then I have a white bounce board attached to a C-stand on the opposite side of her face, which I intended to use as fill and ended up using as a new key light, which I actually like. My final recommendation is that you use some C-stands, which is short for Sentry Stand. They're a great people replacement. I don't have to have anybody holding the white bounce board or the microphone because I have these stands in place. So basically I'm a crew of one. It's just Trinity and me, and we pulled this off and created a little miniature interview. Go give it a shot. You'll love it. Good luck.
I don't think it's a good day to do this. It's too hot and stuff.
We only have 3 more parts to do.
Okay.